Hello there. Today I wanted to talk about the real conspiracy, which is something that, Alex Jones has all these conspiracies, and yeah, I hear people all the time talking about how there's an Illuminati and the Rothschilds and the people are there's a secret societies all through the world who are secretly setting up these conspiracies to run the world and so forth. The deep state is what Donald Trump calls his favorite conspiracy, which is to say that the bureaucracies of the government over the years have secretly seized control of the power of the government, and there's kind of an inertia with the bureaucracies so that nobody really has control except for within what they call the deep state. And my way of thinking about these conspiracies is that they're all a bunch of baloney because if I've lived this long, I know that nobody can really keep a secret that well for that long. I'm not saying nobody, but it's very rare that a large group of people can actually keep a conspiracy for a very long period of time. I mean, it's just that big of a conspiracy. Somebody would blab eventually, and it'd be pretty obvious. So I'm gonna talk to you about what I think is the real conspiracy, which I think would be a little more obvious because it's not a covert conspiracy. It's an overt conspiracy. It's right there out in the open for everybody to see. It's not a secret. And if you're just paying attention, you can see it plainly and clearly. And that is that the people on the right, the the conservatives, the Republicans, and so forth, they have a conspiracy to destroy the safety net, the economic safety net, and destroy the working class people of America. It's that simple, and it's a simple thing. My son asked me a long time ago, "What's the what is the difference between the Democratic and Republican parties?" Because I know there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, there's no difference whatsoever between the two parties. They're all crooked. They're all rotten." Well, there is a difference between the Democratic and Republican parties. Um, the First of all, I want to say the Republican Party stands for a principle, whereas the Democratic Party only has one principle, and that is to be elected. I know that makes the Democratic Party sound bad, but what is a political party for anyway? That's what it's generally for, is to get elected. Because of the way that the Constitution is set up with the Electoral College, and you have to have one better than 50% to get a president elected in the Electoral College, that means that one party that a president would be running at would have to be better than 50% of the votes within the states in order to get the 50% of the electoral college to vote for them. So if we had a situation where everybody's opinion was equally divided up in the country, and there were like three or four or five parties, there's the Liberal Party and the Democratic Party and the Communist Party and the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party and the Free Soil Party and the Natural Law Party, all these different opinions out there. And if they had all these different opinions out there, and everybody had their own party, nobody would get a majority, and it would be like a parliamentary system, which is what they have in a lot of places. And the parliamentary system would go into the House of Representatives, and they would have to put a coalition of parties together at that point, and it would give much more power into the House of Representatives and less power into the election of the president. So what they do is they've divided up the country into a dichotomy so that at least one party will get at least 50% of the votes. And I mean, the logic behind this is like the game theory. If you have a party, let's say you have two parties to start with, they're each vying for better than 50% of the votes in the electoral college. But if you get one of those two parties to divide into two, then it's pretty much guaranteed that that other party that didn't divide into two is going to get the majority of the votes in the electoral college. So what we've gotten as a result is a two-party system. Because if it's not a two-party system, it automatically devolves into a parliamentary system, which I don't know if that would be terrible, but it's just not the way it's done in the United States. So what we have in the United States is one party now that is the Republican Party, and then the other party, which is the Democratic Party. And what has happened over the years, I believe, is that the Republican Party has stood upon a certain principle, and that is the principle that the businesses and the wealthy should have representation more than anybody else. That we want laws and we want taxes and we want regulations to favor businesses and wealthy people, the bosses. And you know, that's what I told my son. If you ever want to see what the Republicans do when they get into power, every single time that there's a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican president, they do two things. They cut taxes, especially to wealthy people, and they cut taxes to wealthy people, and then they also deregulate businesses. Over the years, here's a little graph here for you that shows you when the Republicans are in power, they cut taxes every single time. And so there's been some exceptions because there weren't a majority House, Senate, and presidency. But when they got all three branches of government, every time they cut taxes. And what follows after that, generally and always actually, since at least 1980, is an increase in the debt and the deficit. Because little do people know, because I guess they're not paying attention, but there's only one way, well, there's two ways, but there's only one really effective way to pay down the deficit and the debt, and that is by taxes. Can somebody, I guess you could charge tariffs, which is what Donald Trump is currently doing, but the amount of tariffs being charged is a spit in the bucket. You know, it's not much that will pay off the deficits. But only way that they're ever going to pay off the deficits and the debts in the United States of America is through taxes. And that's something that the Republicans blindly refuse to accept because they don't really care about the debts and the deficits. You know, this is part of the conspiracy. People, you know, they act like they care about the debts and the deficits, especially when the Democrats are in power. But the debts and the deficits always go up when the Republicans are in power. Or take a look at the graph here. 60 years of data right here. The Republicans go into power, the deficit goes up. Now here's another one. Here's another graph just to show you. This is the other part of the conspiracy. The cost of the debt, the tax cuts on the extending the tax cuts that they recently had equals about the same as what the Social Security shortfall is going to be. See, this is the conspiracy. It's right there for you to see. If you ever wondered about it, if you ever wanted to see what it is that they're trying to do, that's what they're trying to do. It's no secret. It's right out in the open for everybody to see. Here's another little graph right here. It shows the income tax revenues, and every time they cut the taxes, the income tax revenues go down into the United States of America. See, here's a tax cut here, and here's a drop in revenues. See, See, this is not a big secret. This is something that's just happens to people over the course of time. They have, this philosophy, which was enacted by a particular woman named Ayn Rand, which is kind of a strange name. I mean, it should, it's not Anne Rand, it's Ayn Rand. She was a communist. She grew up in a communist society when she was a young woman, and she hated it. I'm talking about Soviet Union. She came to the United States, and she had preached this philosophy she called, I forget what she called it, but the idea behind the philosophy is that nobody should be required to pay for anybody else in society. It's that taxes are a form of oppression, in her opinion. And there's a lot of people in the United States right now who follow this lady's philosophy. Well, as if compassion were somehow some kind of a fault. And that's what the Republicans have believed for years. To be compassionate toward your fellow man, they see as a weakness. And, I think that they're wrong. I'm a person who believes that compassion is an important element to a civilized society. And let me tell you my own little story here, because I've worked my entire life since I was in high school. Anyway, I had a paper route when I was before high school, but I've been paying into Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and all that since I was 16 years old. I got a thing in the Social Security thing saying that you've been paying in now for 43 years. So I've been paying into it for 43 years. And recently, I haven't had such a good job as I gotten older. I was working a very physical job, and they didn't want me to work it because I was getting older. And, so I got a job that didn't pay quite as much money that was fit into my lifestyle. And I ended up having a heart attack, which is a horrible thing. Now, it was a heart attack. I tried to talk myself out of the fact that I was having a heart attack. And I waited 9 days. Even though I kind of knew I was having a heart attack, I didn't want to have to spend the money to go to the doctor and the hospital that it was going to cost me to take care of the heart attack. Because I've actually listened to these people. I've listened to, Ronald Reagan and so forth. I listened to them talk to me about, the government is the problem. If you're sucking off the government's teat, you're a freeloader. And I'm laying in bed, I'm having, I can't sleep at night, I'm having a heart attack. It would come and go, right? And after about 8 days, I'm laying in bed, I'm thinking to myself, gee, what should I do about this? What should I do, Ronnie? I mean, you say I'm sucking off the government's teat, I'm a freeloader. But I finally said, fuck them. Fuck everybody. I'm going to the doctor. And, even if I don't have the money, I'm going. And I went to the doctor, and they said, yeah, you had a heart attack. And they gave me a catheter, and they sent me a bill. It was over $80,000. And I'm going to put it on Medicaid. I am not making enough money to pay for my own insurance, and I don't have insurance. So I'm going to let the government pay for it. And, if I listen to all of you Republicans out there, all of you people who constantly are saying, gee, I think you're just a lazy freeloader sucking off the government's teat, I'd be dead. So I'm deciding that you Republicans have a conspiracy here. What you're trying to do, what Paul Ryan is trying to do, if you looked at his budget that he proposed, is he wants to get rid of Social Security. He wants to get rid of Medicaid. This is not a secret. This is something that they've been saying. Like George W. Bush said, I'm going to wait for Medicare to die on the vine, he said. I'm going to wait for, this guy here was zeroing out Medicaid on his last budget. Yeah, he wants me to die because he's going to be able to cut taxes on the millionaires. And that is the real conspiracy. Folks, that is the real conspiracy. What they're doing is they're trying to create a feudal society in which a few very wealthy people are living very well while the rest of us scrounge and die and hardly get by. And it's getting more and more like that. So that is the real conspiracy. I thank you for your time.